They got sadly the bad news of not being in Europa League, but can you do a redemption arc of getting them to Europa League the next year?
Biggest signing in the history of women's football, Olivia Smith going to Arsenal. I'm really curious to see how that's going to play out.
Hello, I'm Alex. I'm the gaming writer at Radio Times, and we're here today with Paul and Andreas talking about FC26 Career Mode. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
So just to get started, I asked the gameplay guys, player feedback is one of the main focuses of this year. Can you tell me about how important player feedback has been in this year's Career Mode?
Yeah, so for Career Mode, what was really important for player feedback was looking at some long-term wishes the community was having. So we were really looking into, what do we know they've been asking for years, like with an example being their historical stats and stats tracking in multiple leagues, but also manager switching, which was really something, that I think even since 18, we heard people being like, why is Guardiola still at Man City after like 3 or 4 seasons? So we really looked into bringing these long-term features, but also since Paul is also working on it, like bring in the authentic gameplay, like really doing the gameplay split. And I think, Paul, you can talk a bit more about that one.
Yeah, I mean, in the career community, there's a lot of people who are looking for an experience that's more grounded in what you would see on TV. Lower score lines, slower paced, more slow developing play style, more, of the pageantry of the game. And, some of those things don't really gel well with that high-paced competitive gameplay that we see in more head-to-head Ultimate Team pro tournament kind of play. And so having that split between competitive and authentic gameplay really lets us give the community what they want and make sure that they get to play the way they want.
And touching on the authentic gameplay, what is so important about having Career Mode that reflects the sort of a more realistic world of football?
Yeah, I think what's really important is, many people when they play Career Mode want to have the feeling of being a manager and building a team from the ground up and doing the right transfers, building your youth academy and getting that feeling of basically they're sitting at home maybe watching their favorite team going like, I could do that or I could do it better than the current coach. And it's like living out that fantasy of you basically being a manager on the team. And I think that's a really important part. But that's how Paul also mentioned. It's also the score part of, you want to see when you're tracking multiple leagues and deeper simulation, you want to see realistic score lines and have a feeling of like, that's what I'm seeing in real life. And at the same time, also the unexpected parts of real life football with things happening like players getting homesick or getting injured in international match where you feel like these are the challenges a real manager feels like. And that's what I want from a Career Mode. But also important, and I think that's when we mention community feedback, there's also a group of players who just want to have fun. So also giving the option to those players of changing the settings to a, let's say, less authentic experience, like being able to transfer whoever you want in building your fantasy team, so to speak, is I think another important part, so that also people who want that experience in Career Mode can have that experience.
Another thing is we also want to make sure that because over the course of a career, you're playing a lot of games, and so we made sure that on the gameplay side, games don't feel the same from one game to the next. We make sure that one game, one team may play a certain way, and then the next game they play with an entirely different approach. One time they're doing more bunker and bunker and counter game. Another one they're putting more lobs in from for corners and for crosses, and just trying to keep variety in the gameplay.
And so last year's game introduced quite a lot of new features to Career Mode. It's quite a big overhaul. How have you approached building on that for this year's game?
So I think the fun thing about the whole Career Mode team is we always want to do more, and we want to really give the community what they want, and we were like seeing the positive feedback for 25 where people were like, we really see EA still cares about Career Mode, they're still bringing in new features, and we're like, how can we build on that and bring in also some improvements for some of the features we had last year, like with Youth Academy this year, bringing in stadiums into the Youth Academy to give you really the feeling of the club grounds, but also thinking of what's the next step that we can do, which was manager switching, which was bringing in unexpected events where it's like, okay, how can we challenge you during the season, during your career, bringing in the live challenges, so really looking into what is the community doing with the game we built. So when we brought in live start points last year, we saw a lot of people going hey, I'm picking Valencia, they're 20th in the league, and I'm trying to, save them. We're like, oh, this is something we can build upon with bringing challenges in, giving you these live scenarios where we challenge you to do it a certain way. So I think that was an important part of building on it.
Sort of now that we're getting to the point where the game is about to come out, how do you keep improving for players?
So I think every year it's about making career mode, on the one hand, really authentic, and the other part is, looking into, what are some long-term wishes the community is having. Again, right now the focus is 26, so we cannot go into the future, but we do have a list of long-term wishes that we know the community is talking about, like a big one that we personally want to do in the future and we can talk about is that we definitely want to look at our transfer system. How can we make it more authentic in the future? I think that's part of it, but again, with the focus this year being really on what are some wishes that the community had, and for me it's just so exciting to see the manager transfers, to be honest. Like my favorite one that we had happen was Chelsea. Maresca was leaving Chelsea 3 seasons in, and then Conte came back to Chelsea, and it was like this story that we could see play out of, like, now Conte is the manager, 2 years later he left, and Mourinho actually in our game came back to Chelsea. We're like, oh, there's a storyline building there, and just seeing these things happening in the game is super exciting.
For players going into this year's game, they don't know who they're managing this year. Who should they be managing? What are the exciting teams this year? I asked you this last year and you said Frankfurt, so you're not allowed to choose Frankfurt.
I think there's a couple of exciting teams. I mean, if you want to go for the obvious one, the Premier League, it's probably going to be Liverpool with all the players they're bringing in. But I'm going for a former Frankfurt manager, so I think Crystal Palace is an exciting one because they are now a title-winning team. And like they got sadly the bad news of not being in Europa League, but can you do a redemption arc of getting them to Europa League the next year? Is I think an exciting one. And Paul, maybe you can speak a bit about the Whitecaps.
We're going aboard, looking overseas for some growth. There's some talent in Bayern that we thought that we would spot and bring into the Whitecaps with Mueller. I don't know. I'm a pretty big fan of the women's game as well. And as a Canadian, the biggest, signing in the history of women's football, Olivia Smith going to Arsenal. I'm really curious to see how that's going to play out.
Okay, awesome. Well, it's been lovely chatting with you. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you.
Wait. Give people what they want. Give them Zlatan.